with Spirit of Matter. And I'm taking advantage of this Mercury conjunct Pluto to record March. And yes, just send me directly to my private messages on Twitter. Um, so you got exposure of hidden messages. Not really taboo, but yeah. So, this is March forecast. We're looking at it from February 10, Venus Day, Moon Hour, which I believe is already Mars night because it's night here. So I don't know to rely on that, but that would be Moon Hour if it is the case. With the midheaven in 29 degrees Cancer, Moon in Libra, night house ruled by Venus. So I know that the nights are Mars ruled, so Mars is in Gemini, which in here is, yeah, of 10, is the ninth house, whole sign speaking. Um, Very interesting shapes in the sky. We have this trine, this air trine between the sun, Mars, sort of a kind of applying, it's not a tight one, and the moon. The moon is opposing Chiron, separating from opposition from Chiron. Um, Venus in Pisces applying to conjunct Neptune tightly, more tightly, and separating from a square to Mars. Um, the tight conjunction, Mercury in the 29th degree, and 29th, is predicting of the upcoming whatnot. So very interesting anaretic degree for the beginning of this forecast. I don't know why am I called to do a recording about March and March forecast. Um, so my prediction is that Mercury is now informed, empowered by Pluto, still in the light of Pluto. This midheaven in Cancer, which seemed to be the 10th house, the moon with the ascendant in the first or 12th house if it is Placidus, um, in Libra, ruled by Venus, Venus in Pisces. So, March is a month where the sun has already ingressed to Pisces. So, the sun will be in Pisces. Um, I don't know, this 29 degree I pay attention to. It can be predictive, premonition. This is a time where I can tap into certain um, predictive patterns for things that are going to happen in March. And this, I believe, can be mundane. So I believe that I'm called to do mundane astrology today. Um, Venus here is separating from a sextile to Uranus. Mars is on the descendant, the AC in Capricorn, which is my 11th house. So I don't know, but this is the time frame where this video began, when I began to record. And let's see how this time frame begins to affect the way that I look at the month of March. Now, and I can't ignore the fact that to get into the, like, just to get into the Google, I had to open the window, which I couldn't do otherwise, and that window was my private messages on Twitter. So there is nothing to hide, but it's something that is very, symbol of very symbolic, okay, to Mercury separating from a conjunction with Pluto, transparency, going right into the private messages of somebody and exposing something. Um, so yeah, that I don't think there was something significant in mind, but let's look at Baba March. And I call this Baba March. So while I am opening the monthly astro calendar for March, I want to talk about the Baba March story, which I actually owe to a long-term friend who is a professor now in Bulgaria. So shout out to Violeta Perikliva. And She told me when we were still, youngsters, way before she became a professor, she told me a story about March, that there's a holiday called Baba March in Bulgaria. And the story goes like this. Yes. The story goes like this. Basically, Baba March was about a lady that was not satisfied and was moody, because March has these moods, right? These weather changes. Because she had two lovers. One has a penis that was too short, and the other one a penis that was too limp. So this is the mythical story. So thank you, Professor Perikliva, for that all-time story. Now, this is the March astro calendar. Sun ingresses into Aries on March 20. Sun sextiles Uranus March 6. We're seeing the Sun, and I'm having a bit of a problem here with the chart already. So let's try to... Oh, come on. Okay, let's go back. Now we're having an actual... So, lunations. March 7 is going to be a full moon in Virgo, which we're going to look at. March 21 is going to be a new moon in Aries. Okay, ingresses. Moon. So this is the ingress. Moon begins this month in Cancer. So it enters Cancer on March 1st. And then continues on down the zodiac. So we begin this month with the moon in Cancer. March 2nd, Mercury enters Pisces. Okay, Mercury ingresses into Pisces on March 2nd, which is another thing we're going to look at. And on March 19, Mercury already enters Aries. So very short time in Pisces. And that is interesting. I'm being called, of course, to do Mercury in Aquarius, which I'll do later. Mercury is going to be conjuncting Saturn, then sextiling the node, the north node, sextiling Uranus, conjuncting Neptune, okay, which is another one to look at, squaring Mars, yet another. Mars, I believe, will already be in Cancer by then. Sextiling Pluto, trining Lilith, conjuncting Chiron, and then conjuncting Jupiter in Aries. Okay, so Mercury will be doing a lot. Not saying it's the star of the show, but it's definitely something to look at right from the get-go. Venus ingresses into Taurus, already into Taurus. Oh my God, she's in Pisces now. So Venus is going to be in Aries and then ingressing into Taurus on March 16, which is another ingress to look at, where she will be conjuncting Jupiter. So Jupiter also, but before that, she's conjuncting Jupiter in Aries. And Chiron in Aries, then sextiling Mars, squaring Pluto. So March 16, as she enters Taurus, she squares Pluto. This is important. Sextiling Saturn, conjuncting the North Node, squaring Lilith, which is another one to take a look at, and conjuncting Uranus. So the conjunction is a hard aspect. Okay, it's the blending of two energies becoming, a bigger energy that works together. March 25, Mars enters Cancer. March before that, from Gemini, he's going to do the square to Neptune again. Okay, so remember the March squared Neptune. Then March 30th, Mars trines Saturn. Jupiter will conjunct Chiron on March 12th. Saturn ingresses into Pisces. This is yet another important ingress that I will go in depth to with the 12 signs in another video. Saturn enters Pisces on March 7. The planets are direct. Of course, nodes are always retrograde. March 8, the nodes will square Lilith. Okay? Can be that something happens there. And Pluto on March 23rd ingresses into Aquarius. Now, already, this is a very potent March. Mars enters Pisces, Pluto enters Aquarius. Sorry, Mars enters Cancer, Saturn enters Pisces, Pluto enters Aquarius, Mercury is going to go through two signs. Venus is going to go through, Aries and then ingresses into Taurus. Everything changes. This is also why I call this episode Baba March, okay, before even delving into the astrology, because so many things, so many planets change place all at once, okay? That you're, oh wait, where do I even begin? So there's another way to view these, and I want to go to, I'll begin with the Voice Moon, whereas, okay, so these are the dates of the Voice Moon. So the ingress into Cancer, the opposition with Pluto, which is March 3rd, there's an opposition. The moon is in 29 degrees Cancer, opposition in Pluto. Okay. Opposition in Saturn. So these are the void, of course, dates that you want to take a note. You can go to this astrosig.com and take a note. These are the dates where void of course moon does not attract anything. Okay, so it means that unless you're doing a talisman where it conjuncts something and you want the void of course moon, so it doesn't create any other aspect but the aspect where it's at. I know Christopher Warnock used void of course moon in his elections many a time. But other than that, you don't want to do anything on the void of course moon because it's not going to gather momentum. It's not going to gather anything that's going to come into any fruition unless you join other, elections to it. So these are the void of course. Moon phases, which is another way to look at things that I like. So moon phases. Moon is in Cancer from with the waxing gibbous, so it's the growing moon. The moon enters. We begin March with the growing moon, which means that within the range of whatever is possible to do. If there are elections, then there are going to be elections where you can start something, grow something, act on something that you want to increase. Then Leo, still growing moon, full moon in Virgo, waning in Virgo, waning in Libra, and Scorpio and Sag. Last quarter moon begins in Sagittarius. Okay, so your body might be affected in the liver, the hips, the thighs, the sacrum, which is kind of like the lower back in the middle. What is yes? Okay, this surgery. So surgeries on the waning, yes. In the full moon, of course, no. Here we prefer not to do. In the growing moon, we prefer not to do surgery for excess bleeding. Okay. And waning crescent in Capricorn, when the new moon in Pisces. Okay, so no surgeries on the new moon, on the full moon. Then, of course, waxing moon, beginning to grow again, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. First quarter moon, so the first visible crescent of the moon, is again in Cancer. And this happens on March 28, 29, and then again growing into the end of the month into Leo. So that's another way to look at it. Lunation cycle. Yeah. Okay, balsamic. This is where we get the phases of the moon. So if you're doing moon witchy stuff, moon astrology, working with the phases of the moon, fertility work, that can be useful for you. And so moon aspects, which a lot of astrologers do, something that I actually really appreciate and is very correct to do, and then they begin to talk about the months by the aspects that the moon make. Now what's the reasoning? The moon is the closest to the earth, And the moon is basically bringing the energy, attracting the energies of the other planets um, into the earth. And so whenever the moon makes an aspect, we know it's going to be accentuated on the mundane level. um, I'll return to that. What I actually want to do, let's see if I can do this, is I think it's on the annual. This is annual retrogrades, and I want to do the months. This gives me the year. I want to do it the months. Well, it's not going. Ah, the retrogrades are not necessary here. So, okay, enough. Again, going to March. And let's go to moon aspects. I haven't done this before in this way, but I think it's a very good way to do a forecast. Like I said, the moon is bringing the stuff. So let's look at the chart of March first. The moon in is ingressing to Cancer, so it's still in the 29th degree of Gemini, um, sextiling Mercury and Saturn. Sorry, trining Mercury and Saturn from an air sign. So Mercury is applying to conjunct Saturn. Saturn in the 29th degree, about to enter, about to ingress into Pisces. There's a hard aspect to Neptune here that I said I wanted to discuss. So let's talk about the ingress of the moon to Cancer, which is this chart, this next chart. Very careful, meticulous work by Peter, who runs this Astro6 site and as a programmer. So feel free to donate him for making all of this accessible by the click of a button, and allowing us to do research and even readings without having to purchase any other software. So this is the ingress chart. Immediately the moon is separating from a square to Neptune and a square and a trine to Mercury and Saturn. Notice Venus here applying to conjunct Jupiter in Aries. So some people might be meeting a significant other. Note that Venus in Aries is very much a Martian Venus, so she tends to take a lead. She tends, and if you want to make sure that this is compatible with your genuine erotic and sensual nature and love language, okay? If you want to have things coming to you, then Venus in Aries might not be the correct time for you to start a relationship. So that's the first aspect the moon is making. Let's go to the next one. March 2nd, moon trine sun. Moon is already in Cancer, trining the sun, and squaring Venus. Okay, Venus in Aries. Sun in Pisces. And here Mercury conjunct Saturn. So, Mercury conjunct Saturn, the moon will only aspect, I think it will do, yes, it will do an inconjunct when the moon is arriving the 29th degree of Cancer. It will, is it inconjunct? Yes, it will inconjunct Saturn and Mercury. So, Mercury-Saturn conjunction. What can we expect? It's the last degree of Saturn in Aquarius. Finalizing theories. So on a scientific level, okay, Aquarius, science, Mercury, messages, communication, agreements. Finalizing a theory, publication of new discoveries, refining certain work. Um, so publication of new scientific discoveries. Here, a research coming to fruition, and the publication of the results of the research. We're going to see a lot of that when the moon is in conjuncting. The in conjunct tells me that there's going to be something unsettling, okay, emotionally. The moon is meeting this. Okay, this is something that I need to delve deeper in depths into. When I talk about an inconjunct, I talk about the moon meeting the planets that it's in conjuncting from a position that makes it difficult to see them clearly. And so the message that the moon delivers is disrupting. Okay? It's not because the discovery itself is problematic, in as much as the way that we see it from the earth is disrupted. So we're going to have researches, discoveries that are being presented in a way that is disruptive, are being brought to the world in a way that is disruptive. Um, so yeah, if I think I want to go back to where I'm at right now in terms of the moon, I restarted this episode. Um, so right now, yeah, the moon is in Libra. Beginning to apply to square that Pluto Mercury conjunction. It was opposing Jupiter yesterday. Okay. So definitely we had certain unsettling hard aspect arguments. Okay, in the astrological field we saw it very clearly. I don't think it can be ignored, right? And the whole sign houses arguments. Chris talking for 7 hours. Again, 7 hours, Saturn, Pluto in Saturn sign, Mercury conjunct in it. Okay, I think it is the Guinness law for the longest argument in history, live or something, but I would need to do my own research to prove that. And so I'm taking a look at the. So, yes. And so I'm taking a look at the conjunction of Mercury and Saturn and thinking about something not similar but can be quite similar. Why? Because the moon is making hard aspect to Mercury, because the moon is making hard aspect, and Mercury is conjuncting Saturn in Aquarius, while it can be rules and regulation or prescripted theories, okay, there is prescripted theories and then there is hands-on applied, okay, science. So there can be a prescriptive language, okay, Mercury languages, so prescriptive language regulations, rules. So the Academy for the Language of Whatever publishes an article, and then it sways the world with a kind of arguments. But the square and the oppositions are more tightly related to conflict. The inconjunct is like water and oil. Okay, they just don't blend together that well. Um, so there can be an unsettling and disruptive research. Also, because Saturn in Aquarius signified government regulations on society, and so the keeping distance, keeping this, keeping that, lockdown, stay house, go out, locked out, whatnot. Um, Mercury, Saturn here, meeting the moon in this in conjunct, okay, not in here, but the next day, um, might be, okay, there's some sort of the people, Cancer moon, being unsettled with a message coming from the government regarding social regulation. Okay, another thing technologically, okay, think about the social credit systems, like what happened in China. And you know, the way people felt about the social credit system in China before the lockdowns, I think might have had dramatically changed. Maybe even people in China are revolting. They're no longer willing to accept credit system, because now if you're you know, if back then they were happy to see that you could know if a person is a thief or not, you could see their credit score. Now, if a person just said, I don't want to be in this lockdown, this is too much harsh conditions, now they cannot pay, they cannot make business, they cannot buy something, they cannot buy food because their credit, it doesn't work. It's social credit system, okay? They can't make any purchases. And so people can see the dark side or the atrocities related to such a system. And a lot of countries want to have social credit systems. And so Mercury, Saturn, okay, some other governments might try to imply these social credit systems. I think Rick Levine talked about the March is the month where AI affects humanity. I didn't actually check the talk itself, but this might be one of the conjunctions, one of the aspects where we might meet that, um, which in turn will not be accepted by the people. Okay, Cancer is the people, Moon is the people. Um, it's not accepted by the people on Earth. It's not accepted, and you know we have here this moon sextiling applying to sextile, in this case Uranus. Okay, so the people are revolting even before governments want to make a statement, and it's like people are already demonstrating against the upcoming laws, and then the government thinks that they can announce these laws. Then we need to see what happens. Moon is also squaring Venus that conjuncts Jupiter. Okay, so hard aspect. I know these are benefics, but that's something to pay attention to. So let's move on. When sextile in Uranus, that is, and then the next day, we have the moon in 24 degrees Cancer, um, tightly, exactly trining Neptune in Pisces and applying to opposed Pluto in Capricorn. So if we thought that we all Pluto opposition Moon with Pluto in Capricorn, no, it's still another. Okay. The moon is also within range to conjunct Lilith. It's not a tight one, but it is within range. And okay, Moon Neptune. Moon Neptune, emotionally nourishing, creative, escapist, artistic. Moon opposing Pluto. Um, Applying to oppose Pluto. So the usual, you know, plutocracy issues, gaslighting by the plutocracy, emotional manipulation by authorities, okay, trying to emotionally manipulate the people. Um, so you can have this shock tactics, scare tactics. For example, in Israel, we had, and you know, also we felt the earthquake, and one of the one of the authority, not municipalities, one of the state authorities that research earthquake, they said they literally did an earthquake. They caused an earthquake, and they warned the people that this is an earthquake that we caused to research earthquake. Okay, so you think about that, and you think about, this is not actually the way to study earthquakes, and I'm gonna delve into that when I'm gonna talk about Aries and Uranus, and Aries and Pluto and gravitational stuff. Like there's a lot more to talk about. Um, but by causing an earthquake, you're not actually studying an earthquake, because of the meridians, and this is also Sedna teaching, that you're just interrupting in something that is like, if I caused you a headache, it doesn't mean that I study how headaches work, because that would be me causing you the headache. Well, if you suffer from headache, it could be from your hormones, because you don't sleep well, because you don't eat well, because you're stressed, um, or because there's a transit to your Mars or transit to your Aries that is affecting you, or trauma, or like there could be a million different reasons. If I cause you a headache on purpose, I don't study your headache, because I do not look holistically at the system. I did not observe the meridians. I do not understand what caused your headache. I just like, oh, this is a way I can get you to make your head hurt. It's not really helping you to heal. It can be a way to distract people, which unfortunately is how things are being studied, and the philosophy of science is very much, or the application and applied science is very much misguided by this political interest to um, scare and control people. And so they would give and they allocate resources. Okay, politics, the allocation of resources in limited resources situation, or perceived limited resources situation. So this is power-based definition to politics. And so this political strategy or game, or whatever you want to call it, is affecting the way funding is allocated and what you do with research, what you can research, what is a valid epistemic standard for empiricism. Boy, this girl is trained, but she likes it. And what is not. Okay, so how do you know that you know? Well, that depends on what serves the authority. So this is the way politics enter the scientific endeavor and intermit. Okay, I think about the image of Iron Dome, and Iron Dome is a strategy for when if somebody shoots a missile, then you have another missile like the Patriot back then, and another missile that is the Iron Dome missile that is shot and traces the missile in the air, and then explodes it in the air, so it doesn't explode on a building or on people. And so there is this interception, but here the interception, or the political interception, is intercepting actual science and exploding it in the air so that it doesn't, God forbid, fall on the wisdom of the people. So that's how I feel about it. Now that, again, I'm going back to now Mercury separating from, the Pluto conjunction. Okay. Um, and so we can meet a mundane situation where, again, the plutocracy at 29 degrees are like, this is our final shot, using scare tactics, manipulation tactics. Supposedly, and when Pluto is about to ingress into Aquarius, this will all be presented as just doing science. It's not. It's already began, okay? This representation, this fall representation, already began with the health. And you see the time where Pluto is, and it's still sextile in Neptune. So Neptune is also medication, medicine, the medical endeavor. And it's also illusion, disillusionment, psychedelics, and spiritual and whatnot, dissolution of boundaries. Um, with that, we saw the plutocracy using a certain medical condition to do scare tactics, to do control, to do things that are not necessarily in alignment with the medical interest of the well-being of patients. Okay, and that can be very intricate and can fall into many ways. Okay, it doesn't mean, for example, with COVID, doesn't mean that COVID doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that people don't have mental struggles. It doesn't mean that people should not have medical interference or even drug interference when it is correctly applied and with the right interest and with the right volition of an ethical standards. It does mean that people make make the edges round, and you do detours and manipulate the situation to do a lot of unethical things in the name of medicine, which is again, politics and science in a slightly moderated way, because it's applied science, it's the medical field, which is also an art. But then the aspiration of certain sciences, what Richard Feynman called cult-like sciences. Here we had this in politics and government. People want to make the image of a science, so they put the right statistics, the right like the wrong models for the ontological unit, okay, for the phenomena that you investigate, but they apply, people try to apply ANOVA models on the the unit called the human being, which is ridiculous. Okay, you study a little bit, it is ridiculous. Um, but this is how the science looks like, because everybody wants to be scientific and want to be considered serious and scholarly, and we sometimes see this in astrology. And so included but not limited to trying to rewrite the history of what happened in the past in order to do something that has nothing to do with that. It was just to try and make that somehow a point of whether to use or not to use a simple technique. I can't even begin to state how stupid it is, but these things happen, and they happen in all sciences, including physics. So, um, definitely this conjunction, March 3rd is definitely a time where, the plutocracy can try to do scare tactics, but Neptune is trining the moon. Okay, so you can deal with that in an artistic way, music, art, whatnot, that can liberate your spirit. Or you can, you think, oh, I just read 1984, and what they're doing is exactly like 1984, and so this artwork, okay, exposes what the plutocracy tries to do, and it doesn't work on you, because you won't let your emotional and psychological state be dictated by how do you say, orchestrated tactic to make you fear, and to make you feel powerless, when in fact it is not the case. So the application of the moon to Lilith in Leo, okay, this applied conjunction, it's not a tight one, but it's already the beginning of this conjunction. As the moon is still in Cancer and applying to oppose Pluto, this is where Lilith characters will come into play. So that can be sex symbols, sex workers, um, or not necessarily women, can be leaders that are magnetic, that go by the instinct of the heart, okay? And this is not just sexual instinct. Lilith is raw instinct. Somebody listens, they wear their heart on their sleeve, and they just raw express themselves creatively, even performance, or actors or actresses that have this Lilith quality of the raw instinct of the heart. Okay, Lilith sexuality even here is very heart centered, and speaks to the hearts of people. The sun is in Pisces, so very artistic Lilith we have here. And the sun is sextiling, applying to sextile Uranus, okay? Some performer, some actress, some actor, or some royal character, somebody has some artistic expression that takes the spotlight, that saves the day, that doesn't conform to the plutocracy to the attempts to scare people, perhaps in the name of science, or maybe even steal medicine with the ongoing sextile to Pluto and Neptune. Okay, so yeah, that can be the case. Neptune also rules shamanistic experiences, so there can be an attempt to frame shamanistics like this or like that, and some royal figures save the day. Um, so, yeah, we talked about it. So let's look at when the moon is exactly opposing Pluto. And I want to look at the asteroids for this one. Let's see if I can do that. Asteroids. Why did I want to look at the asteroids? So Vesta here is playing in the field with Venus, Chiron, and Jupiter. Aries conjunct Juno. Okay, let's look at Aries conjuncting Juno on this day. Again, she is squaring Pluto with Hygeia. Aries conjuncting Juno, squaring Pluto, conjuncting Hygeia at 29 degrees. No, squaring. Yes, so this is 24, 25 degrees of Aries. Okay, this is important. Aries is still in Aries. The graph here is a bit difficult to display. And Hygeia and Pluto conjunct. There's a square here. But no, the square is to Chiron. No, sorry, the square is to Aries and Juno. It seems like Chiron, but no, the square is to Aries and Juno. Um, okay. Aries has been squaring Pluto for a while. It is the least talked about square. Not surprising with the nature of Aries, but she needs to be discussed more. This is the equivalent, or even more so than the square of Uranus and Saturn. Okay? I will need to delve into this square in itself, in depth, to see when did it start, when will it end. And the implications of that. Aries is representing the voices that are marginal, is usually the person that we dedicate ourselves to, that we commit to in a marital way. I don't know what other representations are to Juno, so that is a study in itself, because it's usually, the marriage. Like, oh, what do you look to study marriage? Oh, look to Juno. But surely there are more stuff that Juno represents than marital person. And Juno in Aries might expose facets of Juno that are misrepresented, that are marginalized, that are not talked about. The square to Pluto, I don't know. It can be a couple work. Maybe people meet as a couple and they work against this plutocratic interest, work to expose something that, abuse of power that is done in Capricorn related fields. So that can be the state, organization, any hierarchical organization, formal organization, patriarchy. And again, when I say patriarchy, I mean the original term patriarchy, that is the church, the clergy, that was consisting of patriarchs, okay, of men that had clergy position in the church. Okay, and so this hierarchy of the church, so it can also be something related to the church. I know Jupiter usually marks religion, but Saturn is patriarch. And so patriarchy in the original form, conscience form, not the women oppressing form, but the original church clergy can be exposed here as well. Okay, hidden things, abuse of power that are happening in the clergy, in the original patriarchy of the church. So that can also be a topic of discussion. Hygeia is about hygienic, and here I do suspect we are going to be discussing, exposing, holding accountable um, genocides. Why? Because Hygeia is about hygiene practices in spirit and in matter. And what do we consider clean? Okay, Saturn is agriculture. And so the perception of hygiene has to do with the perception of plants and species. Okay, not so much animals, but more plants and species. And that can bring a perception of purity or trying to purify or clean the dirt. Um, in a way that uses analogies or derivations from agriculture. Okay, so it can, while it can simply be that the use of agriculture and working your lawn, working your garden and growing something can help you to hygienically clean and cleanse and purge your traumas. It can also work in a way where hygiene is used as a power to manipulate the people. Okay, think about the masks, where on the one hand, people who had compromised immune system did need people to wear masks around them to reduce the chances of being affected. On the other hand, if it got to the place where a person just goes out in the forest, there's not another person, then they meet a cop, and that cop gives them a note for wearing a mask in the middle of the forest. Then we already see that there is a bit of a problem. There's a lot of an issue here, right? Um, and so hygiene can be used against people or to control people, to scare people, and also to think, oh, these people are not hygienic. These people do not maintain cleanliness. And so cleanliness has a lot to do with genocides, okay, with racism, with genocides, with colonialism. Um, and there's actually an Israeli researcher who did an essay around hygiene and politics and hygiene and racism. Fantastic. I don't remember her name. I know that one of my final essays for my first degree was quoting her framework, but I don't remember her name and I don't have access to this essay. Just think about cleanliness and racism, or maybe Google cleanliness and racism, and you'll run into this research. There are many researches around cleanliness and social change, and changes in the hygiene of peoples around social change and around, unfortunately, the darker sides of racism and even genocides are presented as purification and hygiene. Okay, so there can be many sides. Okay, the positive attributes, you can find a sense of empowerment by by tending to your land, by tending to your garden, by growing something, and by maintaining biodiversity. And in this way, you are doing good hygiene. Okay, or you can expose yourself to various pathogens in your own garden, and then take a good shower and clean your skin, clean underneath your nails, clean your hair, and then you can feel purified, and you can actually find find inner power to Pluto related issues. This is the best. The darkest, like I said, both discussing genocides, but in this case can also be attempting to perform genocide. Okay? And Lilith and Juno can be a couple of people, a couple of mavericks, exposing, holding accountable, um, not letting the plutocracy get its way because of this 29th degree. Okay, this 29th degree is a very potent degree. And I got to speak about March with the midheaven in Cancer in the 29th degree And let's look at what else was here in the 29 degrees. Go back to the point of reference, um, which is here with Mercury in the 29 degree. Okay, so a lot of that degree. Um, and I began this episode with the moon hour, supposedly, and this already is Saturn hour. If it is like the hours here, I'm questioning, but yes. Um, there is another square here to Humia, which I need to study. Humia. Mercury is separating from the conjunction with Saturn. Okay, this is March 3rd. And the moon here again, 29-degree Cancer, opposing this. Okay, something very potent is happening here, something very important. This is not another Pluto opposition moon. It's a 29-degree opposition moon. There's some premonition, there's some predictive. Somebody predicts that somebody tries to do genocide. Somebody predicts that somebody's going to try to do this. Somebody predicts into the future. Somebody predicts these usages into the future. Where's Mercury? Mercury in Pisces. So Mercury in Pisces is a problem because Mercury, Mercury here in Pisces, Sedna is about to go into the 29th degree. She's in the 28th degree. She's sextiling the moon. Okay, Sedna has a message. Saturn in the 29th degree, so many 29 degrees. Mercury, the first degree of Pisces. But before Mercury, but it's already on the first degree of Pisces. First degree of Pisces. Mercury in Pisces can show. It shows, it doesn't tell, it shows. Okay, some literary work, some meme, okay, some satire, not maybe satirical meme or maybe artistic meme, um, protesting, squaring that said now, I don't know. Mercury is in conjunction this moon, okay, separating from an in conjunction to this moon. The message is hard to come by. It's very difficult to deliver the message because Mercury is fallen in Pisces. It can show images, it can show analogies. It's very difficult, but this is also something that's very difficult to speak about in words. Okay, this can be the experience of somebody looks like they are psychotic when they are schizophrenic when they try to deliver a message, because if they said that in the words, okay, if they said that in plain words, they would endanger their lives. And so they have to find other worlds and other words from other worlds or other images from other worlds, and it sounds like they're speaking with being detached from reality, where it's absolutely not the case. The moon is finding it difficult to bring the communication about what is going on, but there's definitely something going on that is dramatic, that is drastic, on a mundane level. Okay. Neptune here. Okay, the moon is separating from trine to Neptune. Okay, some artwork, some artistic, something is going on. She's unfortunately going to be right on my, or fortunately right on my ascendant. Oh well. Like I said, I love you. And okay, let's go back to the moon. March 4. Okay, so March 3, the moon enters Leo, of course. Let's look at the exact entrance of the moon to Leo. 0 degrees Leo, applying to conjunct Lilith, separating from opposition to Pluto, and still trining Neptune. Nothing I didn't previously said, except that Lilith is going to be accentuated here. Okay, like I said, some leadership, some leader, but there is, well, there's a bit of a square between Mars. Mars here is applying to square. It's already within the range of squaring Neptune. So, um, the ruler of Mars, Mercury, is in Pisces. It's at the sign of its fall, but it can be extremely artistic, articulate in a very artistic, outer worldly way. Okay, it's the poet, it's the fantasy writer, it's the musician, it's the painter, Mercury. Okay, craft hands, working with the hands. Um, so handmade stuff, artistic stuff that express a very real reality that is very difficult to express in words, whether politically or just because it's intricate. So Mars in Mercury's sign is applying to square Neptune, and we've had this Mars square Neptune. It's the closest thing to Uranus and Gemini without actually having Uranus in Gemini. Okay, I had a previous episodes where I delved into why is it so. Okay, Mars direct in Gemini, then Neptune comes in, creates interruption. Something is missing, something is going off, some direction is being altered or changed or completely withdrawn. Some choice is being made between two options that is fated. There can be a sense of defeat, but this defeat is fated. Okay, think about, um, let's say you were you were had a battle in court, okay, and at the level of the court that you were battling, you had a defeat. Now this defeat is fated because you're going to appeal, and the appeal will be to the Supreme Court. And then we don't know. Maybe you will expose corruption in the Supreme Court. Maybe in the Supreme Court you win, but then everybody on the news is talking about this case that went to the Supreme Court. That wouldn't happen if you would win in the lower rank. Okay, so the defeat of Neptune here is fated. If you're being defeated, it's because you're not going to the highest rank, or because there's a bigger issue at hand. Okay, or because it's not meant for you. If it's something romantic, perhaps you have unrequited love, and then you'll find out that this person was, I don't know, crooked person, Neptune, right? So you will be disillusioned, but the first experience is like, oh, I feel unrequited love. It can be something like that. So there can be a sense of defeat, but this defeat is temporary, it is fated. It's either because you will win at a higher rank, okay, it's higher, more supreme rank, then this case will go viral. This can also be a viral defeat, okay? But it can also, it means if you are on the right, it can and it might mean that it's not the time, it's not the place. In the time, in the place, maybe you, maybe someone else will have this case solved and brought into attention of the public. Neptune is about things that go missing and things that pop up from the ocean. Okay, truths that pop up, you know. Think about, God forbid, the body that pumps up, that floats to the surface of the water. They have a crime case that is solved. Okay, so this Neptune Mars, something can pop up. Okay, if Mars is trying to eliminate evidence, if what Mars is trying to do is eliminate evidence, Neptune squaring Mars, conjuncting could be successful, trining could be successful, squaring Mars, evidence pop up, and that Mars action is defeated. But on the other hand, if Mars is trying to expose something, that can be taken aback, withdrawn, unseen, and that is fated because you're not having, or you are arguing, and your argument, Mars in Gemini, your framing is not going to the deepest of depth of the topic. Okay, Saturn is still in the 29th degree of Aquarius. You have to go into the depths of the depth. Okay, Pluto, 29th degree of Capricorn. There's still work for you to do there before these two ingresses, and then you can present your argument. It is not time. You're not seeing the final thing. You're not seeing the core points. You're not getting to the bottom of things, not because you're guilty, but because you haven't seen these processes of thinking and understanding, realization, finalizing yet. And so what you're trying, that urge to argue, the urge to win the debate, the urge to frame things is premature, and Neptune comes to your aid. It's not going to let you do that. You're not going to be visible. You're not going to be succeeding. You're going to defeat. You're going to defeat this battle because this battle is not the point. Okay, the point is way deeper, way more thorough. There's way more corruption than you're trying to expose. My guess here, you're trying to expose the corruption. There is way more corruption that is actually going on. And so corruption will not be exposed because you're not working at the level that needs to be dealt with. And here the level that needs to be dealt with is the core of 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 the plutocracy. Okay? The hidden plutocracy. There's a saying, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Okay, you're trying to go for the Tao that can be named. Neptune is not going to let you do that. Okay, so if you're feeling defeated, do not worry. Do not worry. Do not be let down. You might experience defeat from a personal level, but this is the personal planet experiencing defeat. It is not the truth of the outer planets. The outer planets are working their way, and it can happen before Pluto ingresses or in the second ingress of Pluto, okay, the final ingress of Pluto into Aquarius, the final ingress of Saturn into Pisces, or at the latest that it will happen is the Neptune ingress into Aries. Okay, so mark these dates and take a look. Okay, so if you're trying to expose some truth, if you're trying to expose corruption in the scientific area, maybe something to artistic as well, you know, it's okay. You will have the urge to expose. Neptune will interrupt you. That's fated. Don't despair. Don't despair. It's happening because you try to go at that surface, and it's way more than you see. Even in this 29 degrees, it seems like I see everything. It's the final shot. Now I understand what's going on. No, you don't. There's another level. It's going to be exposed at that level. The other planets are going to do their job, whether it's you or somebody else. Okay, it's also a note to self because Neptune is right on my ascendant. So yeah. You can definitely even hear in the tone of the voice of where I'm speaking from my personal planets and where I'm speaking, reiterating the outer planets. Okay, you definitely heard that now with the Mercury separating from the conjunction with Pluto. You definitely heard in my voice the outer planet. Mars fourth, Moon trines Jupiter and Venus. So Moon trines Jupiter, Moon trines Venus. From Leo, Jupiter is applying to Jupiter and Venus are kind of benefically inclusive. How do you say benefic enclosing? Benefic enclosure. So this I remember when I say benefic enclosure, immediately I have Kyra Ryberg, who thought to name her dog Benefic Enclosure, to have two dogs and name them Benefic and Enclosure. So yes, I remember that. And so thank you, Kyra Ryberg, for the benefic enclosure. Chiron is benefically enclosured by Jupiter and Venus. It's a very beautiful day. That being said, the moon does apply to square Uranus, okay? So if you're trying to have a magical election, you know, it can be a bit disruptive the way things will bear out because of the applied square to Uranus. If you're trying to have a Uranus election, Uranus in Taurus, if you want to use, and people say, oh, Uranus is the ruler of Aries, the modern ruler of Aries is probably falling in Taurus. I don't know. Like, maybe. If you want to use Uranus in Taurus, then this could be a time where you can manifest or you can tap into the energy of Uranus and do Uranian magic. I might try to do that. Well, you would need to look at the election. The sun in here, the ruler of the moon, is not doing well. She's applying to square Mars, and she's almost within range to conjunct Neptune, depending on the orb that you allow. So be careful with that because of the ruler of the moon. Okay? Maybe if you go for another ascendant, but then the moon is in the sign of the sun, and the sun is not the ruler of the moon, is not in the best of place. So I believe this rules out an election. Perhaps I'm wrong. If I am wrong, then feel free to give a commentary in the comments below, or have a video where you link to this, where you respond to me. Then I would love to watch it, and you can put a link here if it is relevant to the content. So Mercury still in the range of separating from Saturn. Saturn still in 29 degree. Pluto still in 29 degree. It's a sunny day, and yeah, there is disruption. There is a chance to heal some chironic wound, okay, around your beliefs, around your relationship, around your wealth, even, okay, Venus, and sensuality, depending on the house for you. So that's all in all not negative. But there is a disruption from Uranus. The moon is hardly aspecting Uranus. The ruler of the moon is applying to square Mars. So not not a magical election, but not a terrible day either. Mercury is conjuncting Saturn, separating from the conjunction with Saturn. It's still a hard aspect, and Mercury is in a sign where it can struggle to find the words, or the words come out very poetic and outer-worldly. So we'll pay attention to that. Moon square in Uranus, we discussed. March 5th, Moon sextile in Mars. Moon in Leo, separating from the square to Uranus. Trine in Jupiter and Chiron, separating from the trine to Venus. Okay, separating from the trine to this trio in Aries. Applying to in conjunct Mercury and Saturn. I like it that Peter mentions this angle. And sextile in Mars. So there can be a sudden progress in things to do with fate, relationship, the sense of self of somebody, and artistic expression. The sun is still harsh aspect in this Mars. She's within range to conjunct Neptune if you take the wider orbs. And she's applying to sextile Uranus. So there's a lot of remediation and a lot of complication in the skies. Still Pluto and Saturn in the 29th degree. Moon is opposing Saturn on March 6th. So we're almost at the full moon. And again, here is the 29th degree of another 29th degree of the moon. So it is opposing Saturn in Aquarius. Of course, this means it's in conjuncting Pluto in Capricorn. Okay. This is an important moment Moon is ruled by the sun, again with the complications of the sun that we've previously discussed, but an exact sextile to Uranus. The moon is doing something disruptive to what the plutocracy, ruled by Saturn here, tries to do in the name of science. Okay, Saturn 29 degrees, scientific discoveries, social distancing, regulating, say, credit score, social credit score, social banking, um, Pluto 29 degree Capricorn, but the moon sees that here, and the moon is applying to conjunct Regulus. That's a sun ruled, right? Sun is sextiling, is squaring Mars, separating from the square to Mars, applying to conjunct Neptune, but sextiling Uranus, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus again is with this conjunction of Chiron, Jupiter. Okay, there is a ton of disruption. It's not communicated. Okay, there is an opposition with Mercury, Mercury in Pisces. Okay, I think separating from conjunction with Fomalhaut. Um, there is something that you will not use, but there can be tremendous demonstrations that are intercepting certain political activity, but you won't read about it in the news. And that is, yeah, my phone just went crazy. It's just dropped. You won't read about it, won't be communicated through Mercury, but there's definitely a lot of action going that's not being communicated. There are currents, um, and the moon is taking leadership, supplying to Regulus. It's visible, but we don't talk about this. Something is visible, but we don't talk about this. It can be that it's broadcasted, that it's shown, but there's something. Okay, Mercury is not in a position, it's hard aspecting the moon. Um, Very predictive. The forces at hand are predicted, looking hundreds of years into the future. 300 to be exact. Okay? And they're looking at it scientifically, they're looking at it politically. Why do I say 300? Pluto, okay, in 29 degree of Capricorn, looking into the upcoming 300 years is the cycle that it would take to Pluto to arrive at this degree again. Okay, so everybody on the 29th here is looking 300 years forward. It's not something you can explain in simple words. Okay, Mercury in Pisces. Royal figures, leaders, certain people with this moon of line to conjunct Regulus, there are certain people that know, but perhaps can see the leaders in some way. You can see who will be the leaders. They're not alive now, right? Just 300 years from now. But the series of leaders who is coming into leaderships, changes in leadership, the revolt, the result of the revolts, what is going to happen. Some people have premonitions into the future. So if you're moon in Leo, you could be having premonition into the future. If you're moon ruled, if you're naturally, having something with the anaretic degree, you could be having these premonitions, um, and you could see the currents. Fated. It's a very fated month. Um, of course, the role of technologies, rules and regulations, and so on and so forth. Also, on a very naive level, okay, on a very non-manipulative level, governments, plutocracy are trying to adjust to 300 years, to think 300 years into the future and to think what kind of rules and regulations would we need around technology 300 years from now. And this is not something that is, even in the most naive way. Yeah, just thinking, what kind of rules and regulations would we need with these coming technologies into the future? Okay, that this can also happen. Okay, it's not all darkness. It can also be understanding. Okay, how will friendly nuclear energy change the way of the way that we do technology? Can we really avoid leaking? How is viewing gravity as a wave, but Pluto approaching Aquarius can change the way that we see the world and can change the way that we need to regulate the world. Because if we are talking about matter, about people crossing here, crossing there, now we are talking about waves. Okay, so person can shift, shape shifting, all these things that we're talking about already in the astrals. Okay, how do we regulate astral travel, right? It's two people traveling in the space, going here, going there. How do we do that? How we tackle that? Okay, one person say, oh, this person attacked me energetically. Okay, how do you deal with that? It doesn't have to be all dark, and it's like, okay, how do we adjust? But yes, definitely there are dark things taking place and being disrupted, um, in a very visible but non-communicative way. This feels to me like one of the months where I'll be looking back to, or people will be looking back to, and think like, oh damn, they said that. Oh damn, they said that, and then that happened, without any of us understanding now how will that come into play. Um, Mars ingress into Virgo. Okay, still just Moon ingress into Virgo. Pardon. Um, March 6th, Moon opposes Mercury, which we saw, and trines March 7th, trines Uranus. So the moon from Virgo, and this is almost the full moon. This is the day of the full moon, I believe. Um, there's a trine here to Uranus, so Uranus saves the day in this full moon in Virgo. Uranus saves the day. There is also a T square with Mars. Not a tight one, but it exists. And the resolution of a T square, as we know, we look to the opposite sign of the point of the T, and this would be Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, here conjuncting Chiron, and sextiling this Mars. So, um, even this harsh aspect to Mars is mediated by Jupiter, and some wound is addressed, maybe brought into the surface, and there is an unusual solution here. Here's an unusual solution. Um, and still, the outer planets are in the 29th degree of Capricorn and Aquarius, respectfully, consecutively, and Saturn is ruling Pluto. Okay, so the ruler of Pluto is also in the 29th degree. Those are pivotal days. Something is happening. It can be technological, but it can also be regulative. It can be something that's done in the name of science that's not, or even trying to regulate science. Trying to regulate the democration question of the sciences, trying to regulate the sciences, thinking, oh, we can't say this is scientific, we can't say this is scientific, because, we would have to address all the things that were happening on the waves and frequencies. Okay, how many spying there is on waves and frequencies? With certain waves, if you go to certain frequencies, then you can be undetected, okay, by any senses. This is how you do what we call extrasensory perception. And all of these things that are now being framed as this is pseudoscience, this is pseudoscience, this is pseudo. What is pseudoscience? Right? How do you, and how is politics involved with the politics of the senses? Okay, but in this case, it's the politics of waves and frequencies. It is this senses because Uranus is in Taurus, and Taurus is a sensory experience. So sound waves, and then you can hear channeling voices. Okay, when is a person marked schizophrenic and when they are a channeler? All of these things. So there can be attempts. Okay, the darker aspects can be attempts to try and say, this is pseudoscience. This is pseudoscience. This is pseudoscience. This is pseudoscience. When in fact, there is actual ontological phenomena of certain waves and frequencies affected with gravitational waves, okay, the cosmos, the cosmology, the planets. Also, people. We talk about. Can we do asteroids for this? We talk about Sedna. So where is Sedna here? Sedna, Sedna, Sedna. Okay, Vishta right here with Jupiter. Sedna, I think she's on the 29 degree already. Yeah! I knew it! Sedna, you can hear the outer planets whenever I go out like this. I knew it. And look at this Pluto in Sedna. Sedna is about the meridians. So the cosmic meridians. And how the waves of gravity um, vibe. Okay, the wave of gravity vibe. Think sound waves with Sedna, sensory, sound, voice. But not the voice that you hear like you hear me speaking, but sound waves that are gravity. Like you can hear gravity with the right technology, right? The gravity, the sound of this planet, the sound of that planet, and how do these vibes affect our consciousness and allow us to communicate with the entire cosmos and its residents. Okay, tap into this frequency, tap into that frequency. How is tapping into this voice or to that voice affecting your body? Okay, the meridians in your body, the meridians in the earth, phenomena, natural phenomena like earthquake, storms, tsunamis, and so on and so forth. So how do all these things, and now you understand if earthquakes are being created to supposedly study earthquakes, you can understand that a lot of things are being created to supposedly study them, and there can be a lot of regulation trying to hide this, trying to say this is not scientific to say that, this is not scientific to study that, this is not scientific to look there. Okay, nobody wanted to look at chaos theory in the 70s, in the 80s. People were afraid for their names within the academia, so there was difficulty to find research to study chaos theory, which is nonlinear dynamic systems. So there is already applied praxis to some of these things, and there can be the desire to hide it. On a more naive level, there can be a sense of discovery and actually attempts to regulate what had previously been considered pseudoscience and trying to sift and sort. We say, well, everybody is channeling? How do you know that you channel the right person? How do you know that you channel the right frequency? Or how do you know to discern what do you channel? Yeah, maybe we would want to find more into that, more want to identify the frequencies, and then we also need to tackle the phenomena. Okay, what's happening there? Somebody interfering with somebody's wavelength. Maybe we want to be able to regulate the ability to do this interference. Okay, so there can be forces even within the plutocracy, even within the scientific community. It's not a one unit. Okay, even within, there is even within sodomy. There were the people that went out of there. Okay, the people in Lot and I don't know the story, like, but it was like even in the place that is most crooked in the world, you might find some people that are not crooked, or that try to naively, that try to work against, that try to think positively, that came into this profession, into this field with actually desire to help and to do good for themselves and for humanity. So it's not a one-sided thing. Um, yeah. No, Sedna is still 28 degree here. She's not 29. She's applying to be 29, but she's not 29. She's going to enter Ingress in June. So she has, I think, a month or two. Um, Yeah. But she does already play a role in what this Pluto is doing. Okay, there is a joining with Sadhana. And so, unfortunately, there can be a sense of betrayal by the state. Okay, plutocracy can give a sense of betrayal. And this is Venus ruled Sadhana. So, unfortunately, women, banking system, artists, creative rights. If you talk about AI, okay, so creative rights of artists, artist protest, unfortunately, um, here they can feel betrayed. Okay, because the plutocracy is not in favoring them, so they can feel unfortunately betrayed. Um, so yeah, we are on March 7. Moon opposing Sun. So Moon opposing Sun. This is the full moon, which will have an episode of its own. Like I said, Uranus saves the day. Yeah, not much new about it. I spoke about it earlier. Let's go again into this chart. This is happening in Virgo. So, on a personal level, which house is Virgo for you? This is where you experience Uranus saves the day. So, think about your Taurus house. Think about that creative cardinal Venus in Aries. So, Venus is in Aries, she's good in initiating, being in contact with her desire, saying, I want this, I desire that. Okay? She's not so good with allowing things to come to her because she's in an active, outspoken sign, but she's very good in expressing her voice and she's applying to conjunct Aries. So let's do the asteroids for this one again. Okay, so Aries here in 24 degrees and Venus applying to conjunct her. Yes, this is okay. Pay close attention to this because we're already beginning to fall into the arrangement of where the April eclipse will take place. Okay? And Aries is already beginning to fall into this eclipse point. Squaring Pluto, applying to square Pluto. Um, Juno is separating from the conjunction with Aries, but still in orb. Um, So just pay attention to the location of Aries in Aries. It's a Venus ruled phase. It's already a Venus ruled phase. Um, so she might be speaking for women, for wealth, okay, values, arts. Um, she's not gonna let disruption of that run smoothly. And the more you tap into her, the more you're able to bring this energy to the earth. March 7, Moon squares Mars. Okay, there's this T square, again resolved by Jupiter, that sextiles this Mars, still with the, after the full moon. Um, there's just this interesting thing going on there that this square is resolved. Pluto opposite Neptune. Okay, so the moon, Pluto opposite Neptune. What did I say? Can I just Pluto opposite Neptune? When will Pluto opposite Neptune? Why did I say Pluto opposite Neptune? Okay, I want to mark that. I want to mark that because this can be a point where the opposite, the something in here comes to fruition with Pluto opposite Neptune. So Moon opposition Neptune, and look where Pluto is, but Saturn has ingressed into Pisces. Okay, so March 7, I believe, Saturn ingresses into Pisces. This is March 8, already Saturn in Pisces. Moon exactly opposing Neptune, separating from opposition to the Sun. and Mars is applying to square this Neptune with the Moon, this G square. If something is fated, whatever you're trying to do here with Mars, your worldview has to accommodate, okay, some chironic wound is being addressed and actually being healed. Okay, so the healing this wound around your worldview, around your sense of self, around who you believe you are, is more important than winning an argument. Okay, and I've talked, I think, in another episode. Um, I'm sometimes I'm a man, sometimes I'm a woman, and I've talked about two spirit, and I thought that addressing myself in this way would be considered cultural appropriation. Then on a Jupiter day, I met people who came from the United States, and they told me that there are a lot of Jungbloods that are Native Americans, and I should check further into my lineage because I'm half Dutch. And I was thinking, of lineage in South Africa, in Netherlands, but I did not consider that I could have lineage in actually indigenous, like indigenous folks, and that my two spirit experience is beyond gender fluid experience. Okay, it's also genuinely a lot relating to what two spirit is. It can actually not be cultural appropriation or some other life, but can actually be ancestral lineage that I'm not aware of, that's indigenous. I did not even That did not even cross my mind. So this is way more important to look into my lineage and to deal with that, with who I believe that I am, than to win an argument that saying two spirit is not a cultural appropriation, because there are actually two spirits that probably have been going through molestation or difficulty while they were trained, and they were only one shaman, so they probably couldn't talk. Okay, so perhaps delving deeper into my lineage gave my sense of self, and the wound around who I am or who I believe that I am is way more important than framing the something correctly. Okay, and in this case, my identity kept ascendant in Pisces, 24 degree. So that can be, maybe I find out something about my own lineage, I don't know, DNA test or whatnot. DNA test is not going to work in this case because it's very difficult. But this is just one concrete example. You can experience that in many ways. There's some wound around who you believe you are, that you thought you were going to have to struggle for. And as you're trying to struggle for, this debate is being taken or being, you may have defeat, or you may have like not being able to argue, or something being taken down, and then it's actually resolved. Okay, here in Sagittarius, wherever Sagittarius for you, and you're actually, by me it was literally it was a Jupiter day, okay, and I met people who were extremely religious, okay, the Messiah Jews or something like that, Jews that accept Jesus and try to get everybody to accept Jesus. And so we were just talking, and they were like, "Oh, we have so many indigenous Native Americans that are Jungblut and so on and so forth." And you really need to look into your lineage. I didn't even tell them I am two spirit, okay. So it's like, oh heck, like this could be not just maybe in some other life I was this, or I was incarnated to be that in a non-indigenous environment. I could actually have ancestors that were two spirits and be a certain of a part of a certain lineage that I'm not even freaking aware of. Um, so you could have something like that. On a more mundane level, some change of belief, change, accommodation of religion to people's sense of self is more important. Maybe religious tolerance. Okay, tolerance is something that tolerance is an Aries word. Okay, tolerance is not radical acceptance, is not world peace. It's understanding that there is conflict, and we are willing to tolerate this conflict because we want to be civil human beings, and we're pragmatic about our ability to accommodate for everybody. It's like, okay, yes, there's going to be conflict. People people are going to think I am right, I am right, I am right, but we tolerate each other because we want to have the civil humanity, and we don't like it's like I disagree with you to death, and I will die to defend your right to have to express your opinion that is completely the opposite of mine, and I absolutely am right and you are absolutely wrong, but I will defend to that your right to say your wrong theory. Okay, that is pretty much the Aries spirit. I don't remember who said it even. So, definitely Aries figure. So this entire composition is triggering that Mars square. This is a T square, and it's being resolved by a change of how you see the world. Okay, a theoretical accommodation. You're learning something new on a theoretical level, on a religious level, that changes who you believe you are and the wound around that. Okay. It can also be in peoples. Okay, some people learn about their ancestries, or some peoples learn about their motherlands or their struggles, or some knowledge is being, some knowledge is being exposed, archaeological knowledge being exposed, and somebody finds somebody, and then that validates something that is completely new. Okay, it's not so much revolutionizing in a sense as more validation. Okay, of a wound, of a sense of self-validation, of that some data is found and validates a certain theory or certain religion, certain peoples united around philosophy or religion. So Mars ingresses into Libra. Mars Moon ingresses into Libra. Moon opposes Jupiter from Libra with a lot of fortune next to Jupiter. So somebody um, with Venus in Taurus. No, Venus still in Aries, 21 degrees Aries. Not making any significant aspects. Um, 13 degrees. Okay. Mars still in this applying to square Neptune. So for those, you any remedial you've had for Mars square Neptune, use it. Okay, it's not easy time in any way, shape, or form. Um, Mercury in Pisces applying to conjunct the Sun. Sextile separating from applying to sextile Uranus. Um, some diplomatic religious dispute. Not very, it is the moon, opposing Jupiter. Like it's not just somebody goes overboard with their emotional expression or belief or faith. Moon opposing Venus. Moon opposing Venus from Libra. Being resolved by the trine to Mars that is squaring Neptune. Um, Interesting because Mars is supposed to save the day, but he's squaring Neptune. So the person who's supposed to save the day is, at the hospice, like something like that. Um, but it's overall not very problematic for the Moon or Venus. Again, to benefics. Um, and they can help. They can assist Mars here. Okay, Mars is dealing with some sort of either defeat, fated loss of something, or maybe loss of an argument that is fated. But the moon is reminding Mars that is not the end of the day. Venus is reminding Mars that he's still valuable, or she's still valuable, and that this is just, it's just the fate of events, but it's not the end of the story, and there's still a road to go. Moon trines Mars, and then the moon squaring Pluto, which happens from again the 29th degree, this time of Libra. So after the moon is conjuncting Spica, um, I'm not going to get into that if that's election or not. It's just, you know, doing the March. Um, Moon is squaring Pluto and trining Saturn and separating from a trine to Mars. Okay, and applying to conjunct Ketu. It's very important. Okay, do not miss this one. It's already in orb. So the square, again, the hard aspects, Moon, Pluto, hard aspects. This one is mediated by Saturn in Pisces. So I don't know if it's so much of a remediation because Saturn in Pisces, you know, Saturn is a reality check. Pisces is trying to, it's Saturn in Pisces tries to say how much water is in the ocean. Oh, sorry, how many water is in the ocean? This is Saturn in Pisces. Is asking how many water is in the ocean? Is there an answer to that? Right? And so I doubt that Saturn can save the day here. Um, so this square to Pluto, and the moon, of course, entering Scorpio, which is the way where the moon is fallen. With Keto, something needs to be released. The moon has to purge something here, and there's tension that's more difficult to resolve. Again, Mars wants to save the day, but Mars squares Neptune. Is helped by Venus. Just difficult couple of hours. Difficult couple of hours. Mars ingresses into Scorpio, then trines Saturn and opposes Uranus. A moon, again, a same Mars. Why do I treat the moon as Mars? Yeah. And not only when it was in Scorpio. This is very interesting. So exact opposition to Uranus. Here Mercury saves the day. And the Sun. And to some extent Neptune. No. Neptune is... Yes, it is within orb to sextile Uranus. Okay, we're already settling in for the Uranus-Neptune sextile. This is very exciting. It's a new harmony in the sky. We've had Pluto sextiling Neptune, which deserves an episode of its own. So we could see how both medications are being used as a tool of power. So the dark aspect, it was like, it's okay to say you need mental help if you're taking drugs, but it could also be the type of medication that assists with purging, okay, like psychedelics or legalization of marijuana. Um, so that can also be the case. And here we're settling in for another combo of Neptune sextiling Uranus. And we can go back to the Neptune conjunct Uranus to look at what happened there. Now we have another episode, but from a more harmonious aspect. So the dark, you can have a revolution that will bring disillusionment. Okay, Neptune, or medical revolution, a medical the technology and spirituality, or channeling and using technology to channel and so on and so forth. So there can be both the light and the dark aspects of it. But we're settling in into this conjunction, which is now triggered by the moon. So we can already tap into the energy from Mercury, Sun, and Neptune, already in orb, to sextile Uranus here. While the moon is opposing Uranus, this Pisces ministerium is saving the day with artistic craft, with intuitive craft, um, revolutionary views of intuition, technology and intuition, intuiting technology, all these things, okay, using the senses to download artistic expression and so on and so forth, or channeling medicine. Okay, it's not downloading knowledge about medicine and medical uses. So yeah. Um, so that we have the moon trine in Neptune, um, in Scorpio, then sextile in Pluto. So there we have from the moon square in Pluto, moon sextiles Pluto from the 29th degree of Scorpio, and this is yet another, but square in Saturn. Okay, yet another very interesting, very potent moment. It is the decan of Scorpio that is already Jupiter ruled. So the moon has a premonition of how to do good. And this comes at odds with what Saturn is doing in Pisces. Okay, and it doesn't mean that Saturn is playing the evil part. It just means that Saturn is trying to ask how many water is in the ocean, and there's no answer to that. But the Moon and Pluto have already, an arrangement between them of how they're going to tackle this very interesting Saturn person who is asking how many water is in the ocean and is being dead serious about it. Thinking about Saturn is lack and contraction, so that can also be like the water becomes from much to many to like it becomes so little that it's countable. But that's, you know, hopefully not what will be. Neptune is already in the 25th degree, so Neptune has moved a degree. Um, Still square in Mars, Mars in 24th degree of Gemini, and the Moon is trining this Neptune, still trining the Sun to a wider degree. Well, no longer trining the Mercury. Um, so this is a waning moon, and so it's good to decrease certain blockages. Moon is also opposing Sedna. Um, Again, not good for magical election because of Saturn. Moon ingresses into Sagittarius and then squares Saturn. Trines Jupiter on March 14 from Sagittarius. Squares Mercury and the Sun. Let's look at this chart. Yes, that's a T square. Sun is conjuncting Neptune. And the resolution of the T square should be with Mercury, but Mercury is applying to conjunct. Okay, no resolution for this T square. This is not an easy one. Okay, this is a difficult day. Okay, there's no resolution for the T square. Why? Because the it's supposed to be resolved in Virgo, the problem, the tension, but the ruler of Virgo is conjuncting the tip of the problem. Okay, so it's tension that doesn't have a resolution. Okay, it's like a recursive loop of tension. And so my expectation is in the coming days, or when the moon is leaving this point at the 26th degree, then we can have something new. What is the nature with Neptune? There can be a flood. Okay, so there can be a flood of some sort. Um, Neptune Sun, um, some deception, disappearance of a certain leader. Um, so there can be a flood, can be issues around deception, um, or scamming, but yeah. Mars in Gemini, so the square to Neptune, can be media, because of the Mars being in Mercury in media Mars and Mercury in Pisces, hacking into something. Um, so some sort of hacking, spying, um, scamming, or a flood, okay, on a more natural level. So this is quite a difficult. It's quite a difficult one. Um, the moon is, yeah, not well. It's applying to trine Venus, and Venus squares sextiles Mars. So Venus might save the day, or she just might beautify things or create some art of it that resolves the tension. So Venus, go to Venus in Taurus. No, Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries is fallen. So she might speak up for something. She's leaving a conjunction with Aries. So Venus conjunct in Aries is going to be an exciting thing that happens this month. But this is the time where the moon is triggering it. So the moon is triggering the separation of the conjunction of Venus and Aries, and probably the conjunction of Venus and Juno. Um, somebody speaks up. Somebody speaks up. And it can be a song, a poem, a writing, but with the Martian. It can be a satire, it can be sharp words, okay? Because she's very mind oriented. Venus is very intellectual here. So it's an interesting day, and all eyes on Venus. So, yes, Moon square Neptune, Moon opposes Mars, again, March 15. And trines Venus, which we talked about. Then it enters Capricorn, sextile in Saturn, square in Jupiter, trine in Uranus, and sextile in Neptune on March 17. Now it is applying to conjunct Pluto. Okay, so there's another cycle of Pluto Moon that's about to close. While it is squaring. What is it squaring? Venus here. Venus ingresses into Taurus on this day, while she squares Pluto and the Moon. Okay, so Venus in Taurus is the ingress is laden with conflict, which unfortunately for the founder of this podcast is the week of the Venus return, approaching the Venus return, but Venus is squaring Pluto in here, and the lot of fortune on a mundane level is in 29 degrees with Pluto. I don't know what it means on a mundane level. If a person is born with this, it means that Pluto will greatly, tremendously affect fated events in this person's life, their health, and their wealth. Mercury is conjuncting Neptune. With Chiron conjuncting Jupiter. And Mercury, Sun, and Neptune conjunction. Look at the 26th degree here. Okay, if you're doing degree theory, this is a good time to look at the 26th degree, how you interpret the 26th degree, because we have Mars in this degree, squaring Mercury and the Sun in Pisces. Okay, also on the exact 26th degree. So we want to look at the 26th degree. I don't know to say something about this, but I can't help but noticing the prevalence, okay, 3 times of the 26th degree. Which I believe is a Taurus degree, according to degree theory, but I don't know. So the moon enters Aquarius. Okay, here the moon conjunct Pluto. Let's look at the chart of the moon conjuncting Pluto. squaring here Venus in 0 degrees Taurus, and sextiling the Sun and Mercury, which I already mentioned. Saturn is already in 1 degree. Mars supplying to trine Saturn. So Saturn can save the day. Saturn, but again, Saturn in Pisces, you know. And Saturn is sextiling Venus, I believe. Yes, Saturn is sextiling Venus. So Venus is receiving help from Saturn in Pisces. I don't know how reliable or realistic is this help. Um, but she is squaring the moon and squaring Pluto. Again, very powerful. This conjunction of the moon and Pluto is extremely powerful. Okay, save the date. 17 March 2023, maybe a bit before or after, you have to adjust the location. And this is, I believe, still with Humea. Let's look at the asteroids. With Hygeia. No, Hygeia is no longer there. Vesta here, playing a very big role with Chiron, with Jupiter. Sedna with the lot of fortune. Let's look at the degree. Very close to the 29th degree. Okay, Sedna with the lot of fortune. Okay, if you're born on this day, you for sure need to deal with meridian based cosmology or medicine or whatnot. Yes. Okay. Aries again squaring this conjunction, applying to square this conjunction, but also Venus. So notice the Venus Aries opposing Pluto Moon. Okay, notice, save the day, right? Save that. Pay attention to that. What happens in the world? Who is talking? Who is being represented? Who is holding people accountable? Moon enters Aquarius, squares Uranus, sextiles Jupiter, and opposes Uranus from squares Uranus, yes, from Aquarius. Um, Moon Uranus square, let's look at his chart. Moon Uranus square. So the moon is sextiling Chiron and Jupiter and squaring Uranus. It can be an emotionally disruptive moment. That's pretty much what I see here. Just emotionally disruptive moment. And look at Mercury, 29th degree of Pisces, exactly sextile in Pluto on the 29th degree of Capricorn. 29, 29. Remember, I started this episode with the midheaven in the 29th degree of Cancer, which is the degree that the moon first opposes Pluto, okay, and in conjunct Saturn in March. So the perspective from which I'm looking, this 29th degree, 29th degree is something very important and predictive. Mercury in the 29th degree of Pisces can finally begin to materialize its communication. It's not so verbal, and if it is verbal, it's very poetic, but it already begins to communicate something to us that it couldn't really reach before, because there's a luminary now, the sun is applying to conjunct it. It's just about to enter into Aries, and it sextiles Pluto, okay, with the luminary. So finally, we can see what Mercury is trying to say. Finally, we can find a way to communicate, even if it's non-verbally, to communicate and be visible, be seen in this place. Um, Very powerful month, the month of March. So, where were we? Here the sextile Pluto. Moon enters Aries, conjunct Sun, conjunct Mercury, conjunct Jupiter, sextile in Mars, and then enters Taurus. Okay, so the new moon is in Aries. We'll take a look at the new moon first. Moon conjuncting the sun is a new moon. Yes, I know I left this too soon. I felt I left this page too soon. So now let's try to go back. Well, it's, yeah, I'm called to address this before I address the new moon. And I'll tell you why, because this is probably the first crescent moon. Um, and so this can be the first crescent moon. The moon here is conjuncting, um, is conjuncting Rahu. Oh, this way. Mars in the 29th degree of Gemini. But Pluto has ingressed into Aquarius. You see, I wanted to talk about, look at what happened. I wanted to talk about the new moon in Aries, and I was looking at this chart and I felt I'm leaving too soon. What happened? The screen froze. Then I say, okay, I go back. And Mars, look at Mars again, 29 degree. What is Mars doing? Still with the square to Neptune, okay? Mars cannot finalize what it's doing. It knows something, it senses something, it tries to act in some sort of a way, and Neptune interrupts, like, wait for Uranus to be here. You're not supposed to do this. Uranus is going to do it, and Uranus is going to take it if it's civil war, civil conflict, societal changes, structural changes. Why do I say structural? Structural Saturn, because it's trying in structural changes to transportation, public transportation. Mars is understanding, so he's wanting to act, but it's like, hey, you're not Uranus. You're not Uranus. You're Mars. You're gonna be here in 2.5 years. Let Uranus do the like. Let the people who are supposed to do the job do the job. You're gonna leave here in 1 degree. It's not for you to do that. Neptune is like, no, 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 no. What you're seeing is good. You're not the person to do the job. Uranus is gonna come in. It's gonna do the job. You're gonna take your part, like everybody else. Um, so, but Mars in Gemini definitely wants to act on something. And Mercury is in Aries. Sun in Aries, exalted Sun, is still within the conjunction to Neptune. I wanted to say very potent Saturn, but Saturn again is in Pisces. Pluto. This is just the exact ingress of Pluto to Aquarius. And it is squaring the moon. It's not being seen here, but it's squaring the moon. Save the date. Something happens here. It's not the final ingress into Aquarius. Something happens here. Venus, 8 degrees, Taurus. Something is happening. In here, something is happening. Mars tries to act. It's being snatched. Like, no, you're not going to do it. It's not coming to fruition. You're not the one to do something about it. Okay, think about Mars as a person who views, sees into the future, wants to interfere, wants to do, want to act now, and Neptune says, no, 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 no. You're not the person to do the job. Stay out. And then Mars goes into Cancer. Because that's a 20-year cycle. Pluto's a 20-year cycle. Okay, this is for Uranus. It's not for Mars. Mars is witnessing something. but it will be taking its role. Okay, it's going through every 2.5 years. It completes a cycle, so it will be taking its role in the revolution, but it's not igniting the revolution now. No, it's not yet time. Uranus is still in the midst of Taurus. It's not even close to where Uranus needs to be to do its job in Gemini. Okay, what Mars is seen from Gemini, Uranus is supposed to be seen in the 29th degree. So when is Uranus in the 29th degree of Gemini? That's where we might get the resolution for what's going on here. But already something of the Pluto thing is happening. Okay, Pluto's happening. Vertex is also here, so that can be fated event. Naturally, it's fated event, but yeah. So we said Moon enters Taurus, squares Pluto, sextiles Moon conjuncting Uranus. Oh, but before that, okay, Moon conjuncting Uranus. Let's see if I can go out. Yes, I can. Let's look at the new moon. The new moon in March 21. New moon in Aries, not aspecting anything. 0 degrees Aries with vertex. So there can be some fated event here. Let's look at... Yeah, the moon is just not aspecting anything. It applies to conjunct Mercury in Aries. Pluto still at the 29th degree here. Mars at the 28th. Separating from a square to Neptune. Venus with Rahu. And there's a minor aspect between Mercury and Venus. Mercury in Aries, Venus in Taurus. It will need its attention. Of course, it's a prominent in the beginning, but it will need its own attention. The Sun is exalted in Aries. This application to the 5 times 3 times 5, so 5 no 6 times yeah 5 5 5 5 5 4 times 5 change 5 change, creativity, creation, creative change. Okay, some change is happening on a mundane level. It is fated change. Okay, fated change, 21 March. Yes, fated change. So Moon conjunct Venus conjunct Uranus. Moon in Taurus, exalted Moon. Then here the conjunction with Uranus can be, excitatory to the nervous system for a couple of hours. Then it will go to Gemini. It's already a growing moon. Not too much there. It enters Gemini. Trines Pluto. Square Saturn. Let's do the trine to Pluto first and do the asteroids for that. Yes, Sedna, of course, but Sedna finally in the 29th degree, so the moon is going to go over Sedna, and Sedna is just ingressed. This is the chart to look at. 26th of March, Sedna is in the 29th degree of Taurus. She's going to spend until June. Okay, and the moon crossing that degree. If you want to do Sedna talisman, can look at Pluto. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. If you want to tap into sadhana, a sadhana magical election, I think, is not called. Well, no, Saturn is interrupting. Look at Saturn. Okay, look at this. It's like there is a sadhana. The moon is touching sadhana, is conjuncting sadhana, is this with sadhana, is that with sadhana, and Saturn is constantly standing in the way. Don't touch this sadhana. Don't do talisman of sadhana. Don't magically elect sadhana. You're not ready for this. Saturn, it delays for a reason. You're not ready for this. There's more time and dedication. There's more learning to do. Don't yet go for it. The sky does not allow. Okay, we need to learn more about sadhana. But definitely look at sadhana. What is sadhana doing? 29 degrees. Sadhana is looking into the future. How are we going to see? Now, sadhana takes, I think, 1200 years to go around the zodiac. Okay, so if Pluto is looking 300 years from now, sadhana is looking 1200 years from now. Okay, and this is why what we experience on Earth is so different to the point of view from sadhana that people find it difficult to process. Okay, this is why outer planets are more difficult to process, because they're more distant from our vantage point of experience. You think about a person, suddenly see big light, and then the eyes have to adjust. So sadhana, 29 degrees, definitely something I pay attention to. Eros, 0 degrees with Pluto. Eros with Pluto. Okay, some very fine, attractive scientist can be born on this day, or some very, very magnetic. Okay, and let's go forward. Moon square Saturn, sextiles Sun, sextiles Mercury, sextiles Jupiter, and squares Neptune from Gemini. This is where probably the moon is with Mars, right? Let's do this one. Oh, Mars is already in Cancer. Moon sextile, Moon squares Neptune, applying to conjunct Mars. Uneasy couple of hours. And that's pretty much all I have to say about this. Then the moon enters Cancer, conjuncting Mars, squaring trining Saturn, squaring Sun on the 29th, sextiling Venus, sextiling Uranus, and squaring Jupiter. Okay, what is that? T-square? Nope. Okay. Because of the Mars application to square by Sun sign the Sun, it's not a good thing for magical election for the Sun, which is actually exalted, but it's not free, free energy to work with. Okay, sextile Venus. Yeah. Moon squares Mercury, Moon trines Neptune, and Moon enters Leo. March 30, Moon opposes Pluto from Leo, and I think it's to do with Pluto from Leo. So Moon is 0 degree Leo, opposes Pluto in 0 degrees Aquarius. It's the first Pluto Moon opposition with Pluto in Aquarius. So pay attention to how you feel. What is the theme that comes up for you on a personal level? Okay, not a mundane. On a personal level, on this day, March 30th, it's only a month from the eclipse. Pay attention to what is happening on this day for you. Um, because this is a theme that may be repeating itself for in the next 20 years. Okay, so pay attention. What is beginning now? What are you where are you beginning to find your power, or to find the hidden truth, or something to be revealing itself? You will be, every time the moon will make this aspect in the upcoming 20 years, you will see another facet of this, and another facet of this, and another facet of this will slowly unravel. Okay, if you're starting a creative project because the moon is growing, this is a good time to start some creative project, some artistic project that is also sciencey. Okay, paint waves, or no, well, paint, or maybe perform or act some sort of dramatic expression of gravity as waves, for example. Okay, so you might, and then every time you have this aspect, you will have another layer and another layer, and then you do something with this energy. So it's not just poof, Pluto is being alive. No, you do something with this energy. Um, so it can be less dramatic for you by using drama. And Sun trines Moon. And Moon conjuncting Lilith here, flying to square Uranus, leaving the square to the nodes. And that's that. Okay, trining the Sun here in Aries. Um, some of you might want to use this as a magical election for the Sun, for exalted Sun. If you ignore the Uranus or ignore the nodes, which I don't think you can ignore the nodes, but yeah. As for lunar mentions, I don't know this topic at all, so I cannot advise on that. So yes, this is March. Very potent month. A lot of changes, a lot of things that start cycles for plenty years, and sometimes eras. Okay, with Sud 9 to 29, or finalizing a 1200-year cycle. Um, Maybe a new age, like Homo sapiens to Homo AIs. Okay, maybe we're starting that new age, or crossing that new age, crossing over that new age. So that was Baba March. And I'll see you in another episode. I'm just extremely tired. This probably has to be my 7th hour of recording, pretty much straight, with just a tiny break of a couple of podcasts. So I'll meet you in the other side of March. Bye bye.